Now, surprising as it may be to all of us, the first reading of Aerie is finally here. Sorry about the delay, but to get all this talent here in one place takes a lot of time. We've been juggling schedules, changing dates. It was horrible. So anyway, I think we've kept the suspense going long enough. We'll go with our first reader, Rachel Burnside. Give her a hand. There you go.
Genesis. An embryo is born, a tiny pink bubble just blown from the wand, still perfect and untainted. Bubbles whirl and swirl like so many gooey egg yolks in a blender turned to whip. Each globe is slightly contorted like the head of a newborn. Curving, spiraling, twisting, they are destined to dwell in an eternal gyrating whirlpool. But finally, 3 rosy bubbles rise out of the mist, exposing their pure, innocent nakedness. They're glassy little parcels, exquisitely formed translucent spheres, almost flawless in their tranquil splendor. As suddenly as they appeared, the 3 diminutive bubbles sink down into the swirling mass of foamy orbs. A Pacific fly glides by on a wisp of briny air, shedding sea salt tears into the foam. But no one notices. Imperceptibly, a transformation occurs as one of the acrid tears drops onto a miniature pink bubble. The globe thrashes in agony as it rises up, trying to escape impending doom. In an instant, the bubble bursts, sprinkling bits of crimson confetti into the air. Trickling like sheds of dried blood, a bitter silence ensues. Thank you.
Next, we have Tina Pritchard. In the Aerie room, her straw goat plays with my fuzzy penguin. It's a beautiful union.
This is a really short little poem I wrote for an assignment for Aerie, and it's from a child's point of view, and it's titled October. One day I will sit within the clouds and watch paint drip down to earth, coating the trees with sweet honey and pungent orange, like my favorite butterscotch dipped cone, though ice cream is for summer, and now the brilliance of color melts into a syrupy milkshake puddle.
Next, we have Danelle Brester, the future editor of Aerie.
I didn't say it. No. Okay, the title of this poem came from a place where as little kids we used to have mock weddings, and it's kind of important in the poem. It's called Twin Towers. There is no line of children to wait in under the lights. We run through crowds, ignoring the impossible games of chance. I drag my fingertips over long rails, as if to caress the memories they bring me. Far behind, my name is called, but I don't look back. The brisk November air falls empty, and I smile at a stranger, laughing when he doesn't return my compliment. Swings move with invisible playmates, chains clang against frost-covered bars, while mechanical fantasies twist in patterns that contradict each other. Screams whine from glittering cages with a shrill sound that pleases me. I grab your hand, remembering how white your knuckles turned in our wedding, as upside down we sang for hours.
Now we're going to take a break from the poems and go with a short story from Neil Heyer, a.k.a. Dr. Pepperman.
How you doing? Okay, let's see. This is a memory story, and it's a short story, so bear with me. It's pretty long. Okay, it's called Full Moon. There are times that I wish daylight is when it is still dark, but the moon is full. So full, in fact, that the sun gets envious of its bright glow. Everything is illuminated. A person can see as well as if it were day. These nights seem to come a dime a dozen in the summer of 1994, the best summer of my life. Every time the moon is out and the sky is clear, I can still envision my cousin kicking sprinkler nozzles into the air. I carefully pried my window open. It was 3 in the morning, and the slightest sound might wake my sister out of her light sleep. I knew it wasn't going to be a completely silent operation. The screen on my window still waited to be taken off. It was a tough enemy, capable of causing a giant ruckus. I defeated the screen with the greatest of ease, popping it out of the frame gently and silently. The 4 of us climbed outside deftly, mischief on our minds. Most of our minds, at least. I usually wasn't one to participate in destruction, mainly for karma purposes. My cousin Mark was the ringleader for most of these missions. He lived in Spokane, so he didn't have to worry about repercussions surrounding our duty. Shane and Bob were along for the ride, both of them used to this sort of thing, but not with Mark in charge. Careful now, I warned. Try to walk quietly, all right? I pointed to a window on the 2nd story of my house. It was my parents' window, which was open just enough for the sound of knavery to waft in. Don't worry about it, Mark howled in the moonlight, his voice loud enough to wake the dead. He stooped over and tied his shoe, not wanting to trip over it if we had to run from the cops or some yuppie who needed to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. We walked through the streets of my neighborhood, a perfect picture of suburban Missoula, manicured lawns, Volvos and Hondas, and posh mailboxes. The moon lit every one of these traits up with daylight clarity, making the mailboxes seem especially defenseless. This was our first task, sabotage the mailboxes. Mark opened the first one carefully, as if it was a briefcase wired with a hot explosive. Emerging from Shane's pocket, the craft glue begged to be used. Mark snagged the glue and covered the rim of the lid. Laughing, he closed it, glue spurting out the side like drool. By this time, we were all laughing, even myself. Sure, I knew what we were doing was a federal offense, but hey, it was still a little fun. Only a little fun, seeing as how it still affected other people's property. But I knew kids that would blow it to the sky instead of using something like glue. Mark spotted something else that was calling his name. You know, guys, he remarked, noticing a sign in front of a spacious home. I don't think this house looks like it's for sale. Maybe this house should be for sale, Shane answered, pointing at the house next door. After rearranging a few for sale signs, a sound traveling through the night forced itself into our ears. The rhythmic sound of water sprinklers beckoned us. We walked in the moonlight, our eyes filling with devilment. It was as if we had found a utopia for havoc. Mark was the first to strike. His foot swept across the side of the nozzle, tearing it off. A gush of water exploded from the ground, shooting in excess of 10 feet high. That night, however, the fountain seemed like it could put Old Faithful to shame. Well, I felt bad, and I still feel pretty bad. My father was on the homeowners board. It's amazing how some kids gain pleasure by destruction. And I'm not usually one of these people, and I wish we hadn't done it. But I say we because I was next up to kick one for the home team. Mark looked into my eyes, waiting for me to strike. His cold glance created no pressure on me. I figure he thinks I'm the same way as he is. There's a soul singer named Curtis Mayfield, and he wrote a song in the 70s that goes, "If there's hell below, we're all gonna go." So that's what I figured. What the hell? My foot came down hard on the spigot, propelling it over 40 feet. I had created another geyser at the entrance of my subdivision. The burst of water flew into the sky and came down right on top of me. I could hear Karma laughing in the distance. There were now 2 fountains shooting high into the sky, waiting to greet people when they would drive by in the morning. Welcome to Grant Creek. A little smile comes across my face when I think of the mini Yellowstone Park we created at the entranceway of my neighborhood. It's amazing what some people will do just for cheap thrills. I recently got to know a kid named Dave who had moved in a few months before we did this. One night, I confessed to all the devastation we had caused over that summer. "Do you remember when the sprinklers were busted and water shot up in the air all freaking day?" I asked him. Dave could recall this well, laughing with the same laugh heard passing the full moon that night. I also told him a few of the other things we had done, all of which he remembered. "You know," Dave started, rubbing his chin, "I have some M80s we could stick in people's mailboxes and blow them to the sky." I sat back in my chair, smiling, shaking my head. Thank you.
Now, all of you paid $2 at the door, and you may be wondering what we do with this money. Well, we use it to publish our yearly Aerie magazine, which will be on sale later this year. Just thought I'd give you that little tidbit of information. Next, we have Terry Hamilton. He's a teacher, a gymnastics coach, and an occasional writer. He's soon to be published in a book coming out called Surviving the Western State of Mind. Give him a hand.
This is called Lost Wonder. It came out of the YMCA soccer league where, in spite of myself, I learned a lot. We aren't supposed to know the score. The parents and I, reluctant coach of the first grade soccer match. But most do, even not on that unpredictable Montana Sunday as fall blustered its way toward winter. 1 minute sun poured gold through cloud and then a hurry of wind smelling snow cold and gray. The amoebic cluster of boys amid run and kick and accidental goal stood rapt for a moment, eyes skyward, tongue stretched to catch the hail. Adults, I was guilty too, all yelled, "Watch the ball," as the players caught white sky balls of frozen water and reveled in the natural wonder we never remembered losing.
Next up is Jenny Luna. She's been caught saying, "Light is her friend."
Okay, about a week and a half ago, I kind of began my own early graduate program. And so a couple days ago, I was really surprised when Miss Evanslin came to Orange Julius, where I work, and asked me to read. And I thought it was a pretty cool idea, but I didn't know which poem she wanted me to read. And so when I woke up this morning, I was praying that she had a copy, but of course she didn't. So I kind of rough sketched this, and this is what I came up with a couple minutes ago. It's called Maybe in Another World. Maybe in another world, only women are safe to go out after dark. And perhaps far away, it's the men who are scared to go out at night. Maybe somewhere else, boys are kept at home and taught to be proper. And maybe, just maybe, it's the men who have to sleep their way to the top. Do you think somewhere else the girls judge the quality of a date by how far they got, or said they got? And perhaps, in that world, it's okay to call him baby and sugar just to be nice. And maybe in another land, a man screaming no sounds the same as a whispered yes. And in that world, either way it wouldn't matter, because there, she is bigger, stronger, faster, and it's okay for her to walk after dark.
Now, anybody that's seen the schedule may be wondering what Jenny's doing on the list, but she took the place of Jenna Halverson, who was not able to show up today. Next, we have Tyler. He wouldn't give me any information on himself, so I guess he's gonna just have to wing it.
All right, this poem is called Dog God, and it's about the relationship between a man and God and how that man sees himself. Fear is a leash, tight around my neck. I'm a mirror image of God, Saturn backwards, misunderstood, just a dog. I serve you faithfully, and still you kick me. Am I not loyal? How can I follow rules that I can't even understand? Am I deaf? I can't hear your language. I know I have sinned, because you jerked my leash. But what act have I committed? Did I bare my teeth? Did I look you in the eye? Wave a hand that brings me to my knees, love tying my feet. Through colorblind eyes, I look into your face. My fear makes you God. Thank you.
Next, we have David Cates. He lives in Missoula. He wrote this novel here, Hunger in America. And he's trying to sell a book of short poems as we speak. Give him a hand.
I'm going to read from a not yet finished novel, a novel that I put aside before I began and finished this book of short stories, which he referred to that I was trying to sell now. So anyway, this is a chapter from a novel. It's a beginning chapter, so there's nothing I have to explain. My dad used to say, only about half clowning, that my brother Gary and I were born liars, which may be true. I don't know. But it's not as if I sit around all day trying to make things up. In fact, most of the time I honestly believe what I'm saying. It's only later, sometimes only about 2 seconds later, when it strikes me that everything I just said was a pile of crap. But before you start thinking I'm pathological or something, you should know that in school, whenever a teacher wanted to say something nice about me, she'd mention my bigger than average imagination. Then she'd start in with the bad news. Not to make excuses or anything, but a lot of my problems began with the headaches. They started coming when I was about 5, little dime-sized spots of pain about an inch below my skull. We tried everything to make them go away. Once, maybe I was 8, my mom brought home this slimy liquid she got from an old Indian woman up in Nisita. Gary told me she made it from the blended brains of sparrows and juncos, but mostly goldfinches. And he said someday I'd sprout yellow feathers along the hairline at the base of my skull. He got me into the habit of feeling back there. I still do it. Mostly when I'm walking into a room of strangers or going up to talk to some woman I never met. I just touch the back of my head with my fingers. I do it pretty casually. You'd think I had an itch or something. When we were kids, I used to sit on the bed and listen to Gary tell me the craziest things from the books he was reading. Like how during a battle that lasted for weeks, the Pope came out and stood on top of the castle wall 4 times a day and excommunicated the attackers. Gary imitated the Pope's voice, then changed it to do the soldiers. I still think he could have been an actor. It always cracked me up thinking about all those nights, tired and bloody from weeks of fighting, pausing 4 times a day to listen to this old dude in a red and white robe shout down from the castle tower that they'd been kicked out of church. Gary still tells great history stories, or sometimes personal stuff about women. But he's married, so I should probably keep my mouth shut. Not that it matters. In my wildest dreams, I can't imagine his wife, Candy, believing a single word I said. And I know this sounds awful, but I suspect that she doesn't give a damn what Gary does, as long as he uses good grammar. She won't talk to me anymore, and I guess I don't blame her. I haven't been exactly well lately, and she's kind of gung-ho wellness and all that crap. And besides, the last time I talked to her, I suggested she dare to be bold and pull the stick out of her rear end, just to see what happens. Gary's okay, though. I mean, he tries. I still sometimes call him up. It doesn't matter where I am. I call just to hear him talk. The last time he quoted some poem about how until we die, our lives are on the mend. Great. Even if it's true, I can't figure what good it does. It's like Kermit the Frog saying it's not easy being green. Am I supposed to sympathize, or what? Sometimes I listen to Gary pick up the phone, and I say hello, and I think of him standing in his house with his wife, who really isn't such a bad person once you get used to the idea that every time you're with her, she's going to say something asinine. Like after a party, she might say, "Oh, wasn't it wonderful to have such fun in a smoke-free and affirming atmosphere?" Anyway, sometimes when I call, I hear Gary say hello, and I think of where he is compared to where I am, and I think of the twin girls sleeping in their cribs, and I feel about as stupid as anything. I listen to him say hello, 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 and I don't answer. I'm not sure what there is I could possibly say that would have any meaning at all. I'm like a Martian calling, trying to imagine what life on Earth is like. I'm quiet. I'm pretty sure he knows it's me, but he's decent enough never to say my name. On the day this started, I got to work early, about 6:30 a.m. to be exact. Seascape, the place I worked, had an amazing basketball court in the fitness center, which is like a company YMCA with weights, handball, laundry, the works. My habit was to shoot 150 free throws and then shower before work. I was almost always the only one in the gym, which is like a childhood fantasy of mine. When I was about 6, I had a dream that Gary found a door in the back of our garage under the workbench, and when we crawled through, there was this gorgeous gymnasium with a full-size basketball court. The light shone on the blonde wood, just like in this gym, and the ball echoed when you dribbled. I don't think I was ever in our garage afterward that I didn't take a glance under the workbench, just to make sure there wasn't a door there. And I don't think I ever came to Seascape early to shoot free throws when I didn't remember the dream. That morning I stood in the gym doorway wearing my shorts and t-shirt, pissed off and cold. Phi-op goons, that's physical operations, had set up hundreds of folding chairs in rows across the gym floor. The poster on the wall said Dr. Cash Dunbar, a bogus name if I ever heard one, would be here this morning to talk about visualizing successful lifestyle choices. Seascape hired guys like him every few months or so. They were supposed to motivate us to be more productive. When I started here, the first few I listened to about made me puke. But the last few just made me laugh. I mean, they didn't bother me so much, which worried me. Down deep, I was afraid if I worked here 10 years or something, I'd begin to go gaga over these idiots the way some of the other workers did. If you ever hear me coo, "Oh, he was so dynamic," about some asshole motivator, then do the world a favor and shoot me. You've probably heard of Seascape, or at least seen its catalog. It's full of photographs of dramatically lighted young people lounging around in the forests or on cliffs. Their faces always look as if something very sexy and very boring is about to happen, like some gorgeous naked person is about to deliver their Seascape orders. Everybody looks disillusioned but undaunted in a very bogus way. Personally, I've never seen such an expression on the face of a real person, which I'm sure is exactly the point. I got to model for the company once for the catalog once when the company was making a very big deal about its employees all being part of the Seascape family. They had me sitting up on the branch of an oak tree. A woman stood on a branch just below me, and the photographer, a super skinny old woman with gray hair and a wide-brimmed purple hat, told me in this totally cloying sing-song that I should try to penetrate the model with my eyes. I swear she was getting hot just thinking about it, which reminded me of this porno flick I saw once but won't go into right now. I was supposed to pose with my shirt off, but I have this tattoo on my shoulder that I could tell grossed her out. So in the end, I kept my shirt on but unbuttoned. I think the model, a blonde, was kind of embarrassed by me. A professional from Chicago, she barely looked at me between shots and never spoke. She stood on a branch below and kind of hugged the trunk, and I had these black boots right near her head, and I was supposed to look down and think what I ordinarily would have thought naturally, I'm sure, but because I was supposed to look like I was thinking it, I couldn't. I just stared at the top of her head and watched a couple of green bugs making their way across the great blonde wilderness of her hair. I watched those and thought about squishing them with my boot. And then I actually did stretch out my leg and point my toe over her head as kind of a joke. The photographer started making faces. She practically had an orgasm. She got so excited. I have to admit, the picture came out okay. I mean, you couldn't tell by looking that there'd been any bugs anywhere, and they made my chest kind of shiny and the muscles more defined. The photographer said I had enormous natural talent, which of course was a lie, but I had a good time. I stepped into the gym with my basketball despite all the chairs. I dribbled a few times, listened to the bounce echo, and then looked around. Screw it, I couldn't go to work without free throws. I'd get grumpy, which unless you're a boss is always a problem. I dribbled again, then stopped and waited for somebody to stick his head in and tell me the gym was closed, but no one did. A running track circled two sides of the gym up high behind glass, and I saw a couple of women in baggy sweatsuits, one bright pink and the other rainbow, kind of chug along together, talking. They pumped their arms and swiveled their hips and their breasts bounced under their sweatshirts so that from my angle, from below, the two women looked like a couple of exotic birds you might see on a television nature show. That's another thing about Seascape. Despite the fact that most of the employees were women, about 50 in my department alone, you'd see more great bodies and that kind of thing in about 3 pages of our catalog than you'd see in a year of working here. The thought depressed me, and not because I expected to see hordes of beautiful women all the time. It's more like I was never able to act like everybody else did. And at Seascape, that meant pretending you worked at this totally hip place where everything's great, where all the women are beautiful career babes and all the men are cleft-chinned rich dudes who'd give you the shirt off their back. I mean, I tried for a while. But the thing is, if you pretend that for long, you end up so goddamn disappointed. I dribbled around a few chairs, bobbed and weaved just to warm up. I glanced at the gym doors, still expecting somebody to come and tell me I couldn't do what I was doing. I thought of the poem where the king wants a little butter for the royal slice of bread. Nobody, my darling, could call me a fussy man, and all that. I'd been thinking it ever since I woke that morning. Finally, I put the ball down and slid about 10 or 15 chairs out of the lane and made some room on either side of the basket. When I cleared a big enough space, I stood at the free throw line and dribbled some more. I listened to the sound of the ball hitting the hardwood, and I smelled the leather and varnish and became hyper-aware of the balls of my feet on the floor. I started shooting. I took deep breaths and didn't think about anything. And after I made about 4 or 5 without a miss, I began to feel myself disappear. This was the good part. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I was ever a great athlete in school or anything, but I know what it's like when you really get into a sport. Your mind kind of flips out. I started picturing energy as a sparkly little Tinkerbell that rose from the center of the earth up through the gym floor and into my body, through the balls of my superconductor feet. If my knees bent without friction, I'd let Tinkerbell rise up my thighs and past my waist, through my insides without resistance to my shoulders and elbows, my wrist. Then the ball floated off the tips of my fingers as though guided by natural forces, an arc from the center of the earth to the center of the hoop. I was on world record pace for a while. You should have seen me. Sometimes I can shoot like a maniac. I was pulled rudely out of my groove when SS Berman, that's what his name tag said, that's what everybody called him, when SS Berman kind of tiptoed up behind me like a fairy and then said very loudly, "Who the hell do you think you are?" and then laughed. I kind of jumped when I heard him. I kept facing the basket, though. I guess he was standing about 3 feet behind me. "Hey, pervert," he said, "I'm talking to you." I stopped dribbling, but still didn't turn around. What are you doing, fucking the dog again? S.S. Berman was a joy. I mean, I'm sure his mother thought he was lovely, and come to think of it, a lot of women did, but most people knew him for what he was. I'd been dribbling a basketball. I stood at the free throw line with the ball in my hands. Hey, but why argue? You caught us, S.S. Berman, I said, but it's not what it looks like. He snickered. Yeah? Me and the dog, I said. It's more than a lifestyle choice. Huh? I turned to look at him then. He stood with his arms crossed. He jutted his chin forward and pulled it back, kind of squared his shoulders. I wondered when exactly it had occurred to him that he looked like this television star who was very popular at the time. It had, though, you can bet on that. Because he'd cut his hair just like this guy, and even his sideburns were exactly the same length. It was so transparent. I mean, if I thought I looked like somebody on TV, even if I thought the guy was okay looking, I'd go out of my way to change. I'd even grow a beard or something. It's not that it would be so terrible looking like somebody else. It's just that if you copied some TV cool guy so exactly, like S.S. Berman did, you'd be announcing to the world that you really wanted to be cool too. And to me, that would be very embarrassing. Me and the dog, I said. We happen to be in love. He rolled his eyes. Then he pulled a stick of gum out of his shirt pocket, unwrapped it very deliberately, all the while furrowing his brow like he was trying to decide what a guy like him should do about a guy like me. He bit the end of the gum, letting most of it hang from his mouth like a cigarette, and then he kind of chewed slowly until the whole thing disappeared. Then he said, as though it were something he'd been thinking about for a long time, he said, "You're a pervert, you know that, Peterson?" I shrugged. He smiled. I think he honestly thought he was being a nice guy because he hadn't thrown me out. I'd have felt sorry for him, probably. He was so dumb. But he stood about 3 feet in front of me, giving me about the most obnoxious smirk in the world, and I decided what I really wanted to do was punch him, right then and there. But I knew he'd probably kill me. I hadn't been in a fight since about 4th grade, and after the first punch, I wouldn't know what to do. If I missed, I'm sure I'd be so mad at myself for missing, I'd just miss a lot more. I'd be one of those windmill fighters. And if I hit, I'd want him to just fall down and quit. I mean, I wouldn't want to have to keep hitting him. Luckily, most guys just back off if you stand up to them, but I wasn't so sure about S.S. Berman. I imagined that if we fought, it'd be a fight to the death, and I was pretty sure I'd lose. "You're just jealous, S.S. Berman," I said, "because to the dog, you're only a friend." It was a lame insult, I know, but it's all that came out. I turned around to face the basket again. I dribbled a few times, but as I lifted the ball to shoot, I had this picture in my mind of him standing behind me with a chair raised above his head. And then I imagined myself lying face down on the floor with a gorgeous plume of yellow feathers curling from the crack in my skull. I'd be dead before nightfall. This would be my last day of life. I'd spend it moaning in agony while being examined by a team of international feather experts. I really wanted to make the free throw. S.S. Berman snorted a horsey laugh when I missed. "Nice shot, pervert," he said. Luckily, the ball bounced straight back to me, so I didn't have to go running after it like a fool. I dribbled a few more times and listened to him walk away. When his footsteps reached the gym door, they paused, and he shouted back to put the chairs in line again whenever I finished. I waited until he was completely gone before I took another shot. I made it, but the fun was gone. I didn't stay long after that. Thank you.
I like that. All right, next we have Christine Rasmussen. And she told me to have you Rasmussen. Okay, we got the last name now. Anyway, she told me that all of you should ask her about her famous Evans Lynn quote. Now, I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty interesting.
You don't want to know. Okay, let's hear it.
Just for this to make our card. Now, I read this morning, St. Nicholas Lost. Didn't give you the title, and it was at the assembly. I guess most of you were there. But everybody complained they couldn't hear a word I said, and they probably had no idea what I meant. So this is about when I was Santa Claus in our 7th grade school play for Christmas, and I forgot all my lines and just sat up on the stage and rocked in a rocking chair and turned bright red, and almost as red as the suit. And it's just one of our thrilling Christmas memories that I get to share with you. St. Nicholas Lost. I, the gender-confused Santa Claus, tucked stray wisps of long snarled hair beneath an undersized cap as oversized children ground pelvic-shaped indents into my lap. Synthetic stuffing made its slow northerly migration as I nervously hummed carols at 120 RPM, almost oblivious to the screeching cries of 7-year-old minstrels and the clamor of their bell-laden arms. It was the annual grade school Christmas show. In the guise of St. Nick, I rose to the stage on shaky feet. All the stage is a world, and the players merely people. I sat myself in the rocker, straining to see over my own bulk. Jingle bells hissed like steam past my ears. Mouth, sticky, dried, as the syrupy speech evaporated. Hundreds of eyes, hoping, straining, and but one sound, a rocking chair. Squeak, thump, squeak, thump. And my next poem was written a few months ago in the last warm days we had for our lovely short summer. And I was in school and I was hungry, and they don't have any decent food there, so I was thinking about peaches. And that's what this poem is about. Peaches, whether you believe me or not. The rest is metaphors. Get it in your mind. My classmates know what I'm talking about. Get it in your mind that this is a peach tree with peaches. Everything else is a metaphor. No dying children, no flaming stars and constellations. The rest are metaphors. Okay, peaches. Above the earth, blazing life, 3 suns set in a proud green sky, a branch bent with ripened weight. Sibilant winds rock pink-orange children in tree cradles. An infant falls, screamless. Torn flesh showers luminous droplets over dull grass. An abstract face is scrawled in sweet wetness on a color-streaked head. Skin as silken as the words in a lullaby fades, rejected by the sky. Liquid light drains away as the pitted darkness composes an epitaph. Thank you.
Kim Gonzalez, she's another person that wouldn't give me any information on her.
Okay, I workshopped this poem in my Aerie class, so everybody that contributed suggestions, listen for the changes. Tamale meets lime. The Mexican restaurant is dark and deserted. The peeling wallpaper and piñatas and sombreros that hang above are faded. A lonely Hermana craves a dancing partner, but the tortilla, beans, and Spanish rice aroma restaurant is empty. Sauntering over to the jukebox, her cleavage-revealing dress slides down her naturally tanned arm. Reaching out, she slips in a quarter and plays salsa music. She breathes in the last of her rich cigarette and puts out the lipstick-covered filter with her spicy tongue. She licks her salty wrist, slams a shot of Jose Cuervo, and sucks the neutralizing lemon. Now she dances with passion, and she dances spirited, and she dances risque. She feels her breath rushing through her body as she comes alive with the pounding of her heart synchronized with the beat of the maracas. She shakes her feet and head loose, her fiesta self emerging, ready to scream like a flamingo guitar. Mad and heavy, sweating, hair ecstatic, ragdoll waltz. Her face is flushed, her mouth open, gasping and panting. She holds on to nothing, tangoing for two in one bold body. Her movements crash against one another, pizzazz, castanet raz. She crashes and falls, fatigued and exhausted. She rolls over to spin the black circle in motion again.
Next, our little bundle of joy, Jen Dalton.
Okay, I wrote this poem after a memory of mine of when I was about 6 years old, and 3 friends and I, after playing outside for hours, came back to find my crayons melted all over the sidewalk. And needless to say, my mom was not nearly excited as we had been when we found them. Sidewalk crayons. 4 young girls watch crayons turning into a bubbling rainbow as the burning sun creates a masterpiece of art. Luscious orange, yellow daffodil, and jungle green crayons melt across charcoal asphalt. A splash of purple corduroy overflows from the toppled Folgers can. Berry mauve paints a sunset against a crystal blue lake of salmon turquoise, and all melt into one as the sun beats on. Thank you.
Now you know why we call her our little bundle of joy. Next, Eric Stoley, who plays baseball and wants to go pro.
I wrote this poem in my creative writing class, and I got a little help from Mrs. Evans too. Summer. I spent my summer watching green grass grow in your backyard. I taught myself to stare at things I could not become used to. I spent time at night shutting windows, doors, waiting to hear the breath of someone coming to watch me as I slept. Over and over again, hoping there was someone looking out for me.
Just a slight problem. Next is Jamie Chinsky, who is going to move to Chattanooga.
All right, this poem came from an English assignment, and it comes from Homer's Odyssey, and what happens here is Odysseus meets Scylla. If you've read it, you'll know what I mean. It's called Invitation to Dinner, RSVP. O foolish, omnipotent Odysseus, here you stand, stature of flecked marble, armor flashing, a beacon of supper to my hungry eyes. You inhale stale sea air, breathe out writhing fear. As the son stands up to his father, you wish to fight me, your strong-willed sword, no match for 6 trapdoors. Your secretive ways leave your men blind. Dry your searching eyes from my cliffs. Look to the deck and see 6 who will perish, ablest in your crew. standing tall and eager on the vulnerable deck. They await my foul presence. I dare not disappoint the souls of bestial men. You blink, Odysseus, the deed is done. 6 men at Armageddon. Their eyes bulge, sweat splatters in the water, drips from unyielding bodies. The black hole, my mouth, sucks dry their struggles till they splinter like small twigs broken in the wind. You that live, look up to me with failing hearts, weak limbs. Why can't you understand? I must eat too. Thank you.
Okay, next, I'm up. My name's Zeph Lane, and I don't really have a short introduction, nothing interesting about me. But I'd like to say this poem in my class, the first line is kind of confusing, and if you doesn't fit with the rest of the poem, deal with it because I like it. And if you have any questions, Pebble is the name of a town. All right. Downpour by Zeph Lane. Pebble, not even big enough to be called rock. Rain comes often here to nourish fire, ice, roses. They, like me, feed off extremes. I roll in this emerald sea to end my seclusion. No need for cover, just an embrace. Grass cuts like razors during those downpours. Blades hurt, intensify the moment, purify the pool of green desire. Thank you. And next, me and Rachel are going to do a poem. And it's one that whoever was at the assembly today heard, and I've had a lot of compliments about it. How about you? Yeah, we've had a lot of compliments. People like it, so we're going to do it again. It's also a It is a Christmas poem.
Winter night. Shifting into reverse. I pull out of my slushy driveway into the foggy night. Thick, smoky air devours my black car. I yawn and pry my fingers off the frozen steering wheel to wipe the fog off the windshield with a woolly sleeve. I sigh contentedly as I view a million colored jewels blinking at me from gutters and naked shrubs. The bulbs flicker like nervous fireflies in the solemn night. There are little saviors come to take me from my dull life and shoot me into a wintry night.
And that's about it. Now, if you would like to buy an Aerie from last year, see what kind of things go on, you can buy them right over here. I'd like to give a special thanks to Terry Hamilton and David Cates.